All right. Hey, how are you, everyone? Sorry, just scrolling through my own Facebook page, as I'm sure you are doing now. Um, where to start today? So many screw ups by Justin Trudeau, and that's kind of the theme. All right. Hey, how are you, everyone? Tonight? Justin Trudeau keeps screwing up. Where should we start? What should we start on? Should we talk about his NAFTA screw up, where Canada's on the outside looking in? Well, Mexico. Remember how much Donald Trump hated Mexico? And they've got a deal and we don't? Do we start there? Or do we start with the fact that Veterans Affairs under Justin Trudeau continues to deny treatment for things like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They keep denying treatment for actual veterans, but a murderer who's not a veteran is getting his PTSD that he acquired from strangling a cop in cold blood with his own hands. He's getting PTSD treatment paid for by Veterans Affairs. A little outrageous, I'd say. Do we start there? Or do we start with the fact that we've got a crime problem across Canada and Justin Trudeau's doing nothing about it, but he has asked his Minister of Stuff, Bill Blair, to look at a handgun ban? Like, this is the problem with Justin Trudeau. Look, I've been in the news business a long time. Normally mid-August is, the doldrums. You are scraping the bottom of the barrel for stories. You're like, okay, who's running for dog catcher? Let's talk about that. You want any story that can go. This summer has not been like that, including the month of August. And it's not just because Doug Ford in Ontario decided that he was going to sit during the summer and pass through all kinds of great promises, great campaign promises, and make progress. No, it's because Justin Trudeau just keeps screwing up. So let's talk about that. And by the way, wherever you're watching, if you're watching on Twitter via Periscope, if you're watching on Facebook Live, click share. Share this with retweet it, share it, do whatever you can, spread the word on this so that other people get to know the great content that we're doing here. And thanks again to the guys at the Nectarine for having me on tonight. So let's start with the gun problem, because if you're living in a city in Canada, or even in rural parts, I've talked to people that live in rural areas of Canada. There's one guy in Saskatchewan that started a whole group against violence because he lives 45 minutes away from the nearest police station. Can you imagine that? You've got somebody showing up and robbing you and you're 45 minutes away from the nearest police station. That's got to be terrifying. So it doesn't matter where you live in Canada. We've got an opioid crisis going on that is combined with an increase in gunplay. Now, why do I say it's combined? Because, well, opioids, especially the likes of fentanyl, carfentanil, they are incredibly lucrative. You can make a ton of money off that, and you can also lose a ton of money. So what do these guys do? Well, they're buying illegal drugs, so they buy illegal guns to protect their stash. If you get your drug stash stolen from you, you don't turn around and go to the cops and say, Mr. Ulcer, those guys over there stole my drugs. No, you get your guns out and you go get it back. And these guys shoot each other up, whether you're living in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Surrey, Ottawa, Calgary, Red Deer, doesn't matter. This is what's happening. And then you've got the low-level guys that are committing crimes to be able to buy this stuff. This is not a Nancy Reagan just say no to drugs moment here, folks. This is simply telling you what it's like. The increase in gun crime and gunplay in Canada is directly correlated to the increase in fentanyl, carfentanil, and other opioids in this country. We're just not talking about it. So we've got all these guys shooting up the cities of the country. Are they legal guns? No, they're not legal guns at all. But what is Justin Trudeau's solution to this? He wants Bill Blair to look at having a handgun ban. This came out today. You might remember that, let me just pull up Bill Blair's official title because it's long, boring, and awful. He is the Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction. Now, remember, there's no border issue. There's no border crisis. There's no problem. We just happen to appoint a minister to deal with it and have a whole committee of cabinet to deal with it. And, but there's no crisis. There's no problem at the border. And just like there's no problem with organized crime. But we've got a minister for it. So what's his solution to the gangbangers shooting up our streets? And nobody wants this. It doesn't matter what city you're in. I mean, think of those poor girls in Toronto that were just out at a playground and bullets start flying because gangsters have a beef with each other and they get shot. Can you imagine being their parents? Can you imagine being their family members? You would want something done. Well, looking after criminals is hard. Dealing with criminals is hard work. So the easy thing to do is say, all right, well, we got all these legal gun owners. Let's take guns away from them. So in Bill Blair's mandate letter, just released today, I want to read to you part of what it says. It says, support the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness on the passage of Bill C-71. Now, Bill C-71, for those that don't know, is the liberal gun control legislation. It doesn't do a single thing to deal with criminals with guns. It only deals with law-abiding citizens. It makes life more cumbersome. It increases paperwork, but it doesn't actually deal with gangsters with guns because that's hard. And as Justin Trudeau will tell you, and I quote, hard things are hard. Yeah, that's what our Prime Minister once said. So he wants Bill Blair to support the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness on the passage of Bill C-71 and work together on additional policy, regulations, or legislation that could reduce crime involving the use of firearms and keeping Canadians safe. Well, at that point, you could look at all kinds of things like making it tougher for repeat offenders on gun crimes to get bail. Do you know that these guys just go through the system like a revolving door at your favorite fancy hotel? They just go around and around and around, and they get busted by the cops, and they're out on the street, and you know what they don't follow? They don't follow their bail conditions. If you made it harder for them to get bail, guess what? They wouldn't be out in the streets committing more crimes. But, again, and I repeat, as Justin Trudeau says, hard things are hard. So what does he want to do? He wants to go the easy route. So in Bill Blair's letter, mandate letter, it says, you should lead an examination of a full ban on handguns and assault weapons in Canada while not impeding the lawful use of firearms by Canadians. Okay, not impeding the lawful use of firearms by Canadians. You want to take away two types of firearms. Let's deal with assault weapons. It's a useless term. It means nothing. What's an assault weapon? Look, I'm from a city where an assault weapon could be a glass that you smash over the table and stick into somebody. It could be a pen. If I picked up a baseball bat and started hitting you with it, guess what? I would be assaulting you with a weapon. That would be an assault weapon. Calling a gun an assault weapon is ridiculous. Generally speaking, and you can look at the assault weapons ban in the United States, which Bill Clinton signed into law. It was in place for more than 10 years. It did not reduce gun crime. It targeted guns that looked scary. That is honestly what it was. It was all about cosmetics. It wasn't about power. It wasn't about lethality. It wasn't about any of that. And it didn't reduce gun crime. So assault weapon, that's a ridiculous term. Now on handguns, the handguns are, we've got millions of handguns in Canada owned by law-abiding citizens. How does taking away the gun from them reduce the gun crime for the gangsters? You might think that if they're buying fentanyl and press pills and making fake Percocets to sell on the streets that will have your kids or your brother or your sister overdosing, that they're not buying their guns at Canadian Tire or Walmart or Cabela's or Sale or anywhere like that. They're buying them on the black market, and that's where they're buying their ammunition. So Bill Blair and Justin Trudeau are going to look at taking handguns away from law-abiding Canadians because they don't know what to do with the gangsters. Do you think for 1 minute that taking a handgun away from someone like me will stop a gangster from shooting up one of his rivals? No, it's not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen. Now, people will say, oh, wait. The police have told me 50% of handguns used in crimes in Canada now come from Canada. No, not true. I've asked Statistics Canada about this. I've asked the Canadian Firearms Information System about this. You know what they both say? We don't track this data. We don't look at this data. So the stats don't exist. My colleague at the Toronto Sun, Chris Doucette, he asked the Toronto Police Service for this information. You know what he found out? Less than 20% of guns were from Canada. They just can't trace the guns. When they say 50% come from Canada, that's 50% of the ones they can trace. And guess what? Most of them they can't trace. And the ones from Canada they're stolen, well, they don't have the sophisticated gun smuggling operations to deal with them, to scrape off the serial numbers and all that. No, they just steal them and they sell them. The Americans, much more sophisticated. They steal them, they do straw purchases, they scrape off the serial numbers, and they sell them on the black market. Most of our guns are still coming in from the United States. You can ban handguns in Canada. Guess what? We live next to the biggest gun market in the world. They're still going to be coming in because they're freely available down there, and gangsters are willing to sell them to other gangsters. So Justin Trudeau is all wet on this issue. Let's talk about the other one that has me absolutely outraged. I was in the reserves. Before that, I was in cadets. I would never consider myself a veteran. I wasn't deployed anywhere, but I've experienced the military life. I've experienced the military workforce and how it works. I've got family members that are still in. I've got family members that are veterans that have been deployed, that are about to be deployed, friends that have gone through it. They go through a lot. Can you imagine going into Bosnia in the late 90s and the former Yugoslavia is ripping itself apart? People are killing each other over ethnic and religious rivalries. Or you're in Afghanistan and people are blowing themselves up to kill you or to kill girls going to school, and you see this stuff. It's going to mess with your head. And a lot of guys come out with PTSD. We used to call it shell shock. We used to call it all kinds of things. We used to just say, oh, they're not right in the head. They saw weird things in the war. Now we call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We've had a whole generation of military guys go through this and not get the treatment that they need, not get the treatment that they deserve. I spoke to one veteran today. His name's Colin Saunders. He's a retired sergeant from the artillery regiment up at Canadian Forces Base Petawawa. And he said, yeah, he went into Bosnia and he had a brain injury based on what he went through there. Never quite got the treatment that he needed. And he's had to fight with Veterans Affairs over that. Why does this matter, and how does it relate to Justin Trudeau screwing up? Well, let me tell you about this next story here. There's a guy out of Halifax. His name is Christopher Garnier. He's 30 years old, and he's in jail for a life sentence. He can't get parole for 13 and a half years. I think it should be a lot longer, but he can't get parole for 13 and a half years. What did he do? Well, he strangled a woman. He strangled a police officer. All the stories say, oh, she was an off-duty police officer. I don't care. You're a police officer, you're a police officer, on duty or off. He strangled her. He used his bare hands to choke the life out of her. And from that, guess what he developed? PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And now he's getting treatment paid for by Veterans Affairs Canada. Here's the thing. Christopher Garnier is not a veteran. He's never served in the military. Closest he had got to the military, his father was in. His father is a vet. So he's getting treatment for PTSD. The same kind of treatment that our actual veterans are being denied. This son of a bitch who strangled someone and developed PTSD because he choked the life out of this woman, Catherine Campbell, 36-year-old police officer. He choked the life out of her, left her body by the McDonald Bridge in Halifax, left her to die and to rot. And he developed PTSD because of that. Poor baby. He's getting treatment from Veterans Affairs Canada. Now, Veterans Affairs Canada was asked for a statement. They were asked, okay, well, what's going on? Why are you doing this? And they said, we can't comment on individual cases. But effectively, what they said was that when one member serves, the whole family serves. And so this is part of family benefits and care. I would get that if Christopher Garnier were, say, a 16-year-old that committed a heinous crime. You know, he's could be an army brat that's bounced all over the place, and he's still a minor. And he is getting benefits because his dad is on benefits, and he's a minor, and so on his parents' plan. This is a grown-ass adult. This is a grown-up man that killed a fully grown woman, and he's getting benefits. How is that not outrageous? So I spoke to Colin Saunders, and he said that he and so many others in the military community and the vets community are just outraged by this. They have to fight tooth and nail for what they get. Now, you might remember back in the winter, Justin Trudeau was doing his Please Love Me tour through Western Canada. I believe it was in Edmonton. And this vet got up and he asked him a question. He said, and he talked about his own experience going through different tour deployments and what he gave up and the fact that he still had to fight his government for benefits. And he asked Justin Trudeau, why are you still fighting these veterans groups in court? You promised not to do that, because Justin Trudeau campaigned in the last election saying, I won't be like those evil, nasty conservatives. I will look after our veterans. I will look after the people that sign up for our country and put their lives on the line. And then guess what? He kept fighting them in court. And he was asked, why are you doing this? And he said, because they're asking for more than we can give. They're asking for more than we can give. They put their lives on the line. They put their mental health on the line. They put their physical health on the line. And he's fighting them in court. Meanwhile, Omar Khadr gets $10.5 million. We've had 33,000 people walk across the border, mostly at Roxham Road in Quebec. And he finds money for them. It's literally into the billions for social services, for housing, for job grants. They're expediting job permits, work permits. If you saw the story I wrote about Jackie Scott in the Sun, you know, they won't give her a work permit, but hey, all these people walking across can get it. Billions, literally billions of dollars spent on people we didn't know existed that are fleeing upstate New York in the Lake Champlain region, an area you flee to, not from. They've got all the money they want. He'll transfer however many hundreds, literally hundreds of civil servants he needs to the border to look after them and process them. But our vets, yeah, no, you're asking for more than we can give, unless you're a cold-blooded murderer that strangled a police officer to death and dumped her body. And your dad's a vet, so you're going to take the services that our actual veterans need. You can find, if you haven't seen this story, you can find it on my social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. It leaves me cold. It leaves me angry. I'm sorry. I got to stop there. It's the type of thing that brings out a visceral reaction, and I've got to stop. Everyone should be outraged by this. So check the story out, retweet it, share it, do what you can on that, whether at the Nectarine or elsewhere. Find the story and let your fellow Canadians know about this. Finally, Justin Trudeau and NAFTA. Hey, we finally got invited back to the big kids table. We finally were told, okay, you can come join the adults in the discussion. And I don't know about you. Do you remember that when you were a kid? You finally got invited to the big table. You felt so important. Canada shouldn't feel too important over this. We are not in a great position. I'm not saying the sky's falling, but we're not in a great position. We are looking at having to take a deal or leave a deal that the Americans and the Mexicans negotiated. This could have been Canada. This could have been us. We could have been the ones saying, hey, Mexico, do you want to sign this deal that we just did with the Americans? But Justin Trudeau said no. The Americans offered this to Canada, and we said, no, 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 no. We are going to stand with Mexico. We're going to stand together. We're going to form a united front. We're going to have a trilateral deal. Donald Trump has been open from the beginning. He doesn't really like NAFTA. He doesn't like the trilateral deal. He doesn't want to go this route. You don't have to like Donald Trump. You can hate him if that's where you're at. But our trade with the Americans is what drives our economy. And to take that away means, you know, even if it's out of spite, because, oh, I hate the, what do people keep calling him? The orange idiot in the White House. You can hate the orange idiot in the White House if you want. Go ahead. Knock yourself out on that. But if you'd rather have no trade deal than a deal with Donald Trump, then what you're saying is that you want your neighbors to be unemployed. Pick a region of the country. We depend on trade with the United States. So if you don't want a deal with Donald Trump and the Americans, you want yourself or your neighbors to be unemployed. Maybe you're a civil servant and you don't care. You know, well, I don't depend on free trade. Sure you don't. Sure you don't. Except that the taxes we all pay help pay your salary. By the way, if you like what you're hearing, make sure that you're sharing this on Facebook, retweeting it on Twitter if you're watching on Periscope. Share this so that Canadians get to hear what's really going on. Because one thing that's happening in the media, when it comes to the NAFTA negotiations is that most of them line up and lick the boots of the PMO. They lick the boots of Justin Trudeau. I'm not carrying any water for Donald Trump on this, but I am trying to explain to you what is really happening. Donald Trump announces this deal with the Mexicans. Okay, you want to make fun of how the conference call went and the fact that they had cameras rolling before Trump was set up on the phone call with Enrique Peña Nieto? Yeah, go ahead. It looks silly. It was not good. I don't care. Jobs are on the line. People's livelihoods are on the line. Mock the guy all you want. At the end of the day, we need a deal. And most of the media would rather mock Trump or line up and repeat Trudeau talking points, which are nothing to see here. We don't need to worry about it. All last week, while these trade talks were going on with the U.S. and Mexico, we were told, oh, don't worry. They're just dealing with issues that are between the two of them. They're not dealing with anything related to Canada. How'd that work out for you? I'll tell you, it didn't work out well because they've already come to an agreement on auto parts, on the sunset clause, and on the dispute resolution mechanism. Let me walk through those one at a time. Dispute resolution mechanism. This is what we use to fight back when the Americans decide Canada's selling us too much stuff. They found a way to be more competitive, lower dollar, better efficiency, whatever. They don't like that we're selling them too much stuff. They impose tariffs on us or some type of non-tariff barrier to trade. We say, you're violating the trade agreement. We take them to the dispute resolution mechanism. Most of the time, Canada's won. The Americans don't like that. They're like, we keep losing at this. We want rid of it. It violates our sovereignty. Mexico was on our side when all three of us were at the table. Now, my sources are telling me the Mexicans have said, doesn't really bother us. We're fine. We can live without it. So if you got 2 out of 3 partners in a trade deal saying, we don't need that, guess what? It's gone. As for the sunset clause, well, there's going to be a sunset clause. It's going to be a 6-year review. Now, that's not as stringent as the Americans wanted, but it's more than what Canada wanted to give, and the Mexicans have agreed to it. So guess what? We've got to accept it or reject it. If we reject it, we're out of the trade deal. And then there's auto parts. The auto industry is incredibly important to the largest province in the country, Ontario. This is, according to the government of Ontario, 1 in 5 jobs, directly or indirectly, is carried by the auto industry. We have been saying we disagreed with the Americans on changing the parts requirement. Right now, under NAFTA, to be considered a North American-made car, you've got to have 62.5% of all parts in that car be made in one of the NAFTA countries. Well, guess what? Since 1994, what constitutes an auto part has changed an awful lot. There's a lot more electronics, a lot more computer chips, a lot more technology. A lot of that technology is coming from Asia. The Americans said, you know what? We can't have more than half the car, more than half the value of the car, being made in Asia or offshore. We've got to have more parts made in North America. So they wanted to up it. Canada disagreed with that. The Mexicans went in and they agreed. 75% of the parts now have to come from North America, and the Americans got what they wanted. The Mexicans have to boost their wages to about $16 an hour for just under half of the areas making car parts in Mexico. So a win for the Mexicans, a win for the Americans. Canada's not even at the table. Our biggest issues were decided when we were not there. Why? Because Justin Trudeau wanted to stand up for Mexico rather than Canada. Because Justin Trudeau decided to annoy Donald Trump at the G7 by going before the cameras. Trump had offered him a concession on some of his biggest issues in a private meeting, and then Trudeau goes on camera and says, I won't get pushed around by the Americans. I'm big and strong. It was ridiculous. That's what set Trump off when he was on Air Force One, tweeting up a storm about how Trudeau was backstabbing him, because Trudeau did backstab him. Then Chrystia Freeland goes down to Washington and makes a speech crapping all over the Americans in their own backyard. She's pissing on their carpet in their living room. You don't do that. So this is how we ended up here. And now the Mexicans have a deal. Canada's been invited to the table. And Trump said, you're going to give me what I want when it comes to the dairy industry, or I'm going to put tariffs on your automobiles. Are we going to have to give up all of supply management? Probably not, but we're going to have to give up something. And it's going to be more painful than it would have been had Justin Trudeau accepted the invite of Donald Trump to do one-on-one negotiations ages ago. Trudeau decided he'd let his ego get in the way. Trudeau decided he was smarter than Trump. And now Canada has been sitting on the outside looking in. And when we get invited up to that big table, guess what? It's not really a table. It's us being put over a barrel. And it's not going to be fun. I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. Do make sure, again, to click share before you sign off. Share it on Facebook, retweet it on Twitter. You can follow me online, facebook.com/Brian Lilley, twitter.com/Brian Lilley. Make sure you're following the Nectarine, sharing their stories, and you can catch me for the rest of the week on News Talk 580 CFRA in Ottawa. I'm on air from 10 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon Eastern Time. Join me there. You can even call in. Guess what? We got old-fashioned call-in radio with a 1-800 number, so you can join in the conversation that way. Thanks for taking part tonight, and thanks for watching. Remember, I'm on your side.